What's going on, skaters? Another quick tutorial for you guys on backside 5-0s on quarter pipes. So a 5-0 grind is basically where you're on your back truck, and a backside 5-0 is where your bum is sort of facing behind you and you're facing out to the ramp when you're in the stall. So there are two different ways of doing the backside 5-0. One is where you're pinching on your back wheel, and the other one is where you're stood pretty much on top of the deck. So the first technique is going to be the one where you pinch on your heel. Now you're going to go up the ramp, and you could learn the stalls first. You go up the ramp, you twist at the top, and you make sure that this wheel goes on top of the coping like this, and this is effectively locking the board in place, making sure the board doesn't drop down. You can hold that for just like a fraction of a second, keeping all your weight on your heel to ensure that that wheel stays solidly locked this side of the coping. And then when you're ready, you just rotate your shoulders, lean into the ramp, point your toes down to ensure the board is tilted this way, and that wheel should just simply unhook, roll down the ramp. If you want to do this trick as a slide, as a grind, then all you need to do is make sure that you carve up the ramp and make sure that you meet the coping parallel by the time you've got there. You don't want to go up the ramp like this. You want to carve really wide and make sure that you're just meeting the coping and only just getting that wheel above the coping like this. You will slide along on your heel like this. When you're ready to drop down the ramp, you just twist your shoulders, and that will cause the board to twist, and you should drop down, the wheel will unhook, and you will ride down the ramp, continuing this arc motion out of the grind. I don't lean on top of the deck with this technique. I stay out in the ramp and just make sure I'm pushing my heel into the wheel, making sure I'm locked on the coping. If you want to lock in and slide longer, then you might need to kind of point the nose up and try and slide your tail. Almost feels like sliding your tail below the coping here. It sort of feels like a salad a little bit. This is called a salad grind, where it's like a 5-0, but it's actually tweaked upwards. If you just do that very slightly, you can kind of hold the lock for a little longer. Let's try that one out. If you're nervous with this trick, you can just do a little carving and doing like a kick turn almost, where you go a little bit higher and just scratch the coping just to get yourself used to the feeling of sliding and grinding your back truck. So that's how you do a 5-0 grind, by pinching on the back wheel, but I much prefer to do the ones where the board's actually fully out on the deck and balanced on the top, and I have to kind of swing and lean my body back into the ramp. It feels a little bit more sketchy, but it feels more stylish and a little bit more unique. You don't see many people doing this type of technique on a 5-0 slide. So a key difference with this trick is how you start. You don't actually carve and get yourself parallel with the coping on the lower part of the ramp. You carve a little bit higher, and you allow the wheel to go right on top. You are going to lock your toe side wheel on the coping, and you're going to be fully stood above the deck on top of the surface of the ramp. In order to avoid the wheels just slipping off and riding onto the top, you will need to twist your nose back into the ramp, and you may slide sort of crooked with the board pointing this way back into the ramp. This is going to help make sure that you kind of lock in this position, keeping some weight on your toes as well to do so. You're not going to carve as much as the first technique. You're going to allow the wheels to go right on the top. You're going to twist the board, pointing the nose back into the ramp. Like I said, all your weight is on top of the ramp. You're going to want to let it slide along for a little bit, and when you're ready to turn in, you must shift your body weight first, and then lean in and pivot right on your toes. Push your toes down, pivot in, and allow the board to go down the ramp again. If you're a little nervous with this trick, then you may want to learn axle stalls, where you kind of turn in without hanging the truck off. You want to make sure your trucks are fully locked, and you get used to pushing down on your toes as you rotate to kind of make sure the board levels out with the surface of the ramp before you come in. You can then also try this technique with a 5-0 stall, fully on top of the deck, and make sure you push your toes down, keeping this wheel with a lot of weight, a lot of pressure to lock it on the coping, and again tilting the board this way to make sure it comes in. If you want to grind further, then obviously you need to go with more speed and carve a bit more of an angle into the trick itself. One common issue I sometimes get with this one, I think other people would as well, is that you might find that by twisting the board to ensure that the board doesn't roll on top, you actually end up in a tail slide. You need to try and keep your arms fairly parallel with the coping and only slightly tweak that nose. You don't want to go too far, otherwise you will go to tail slide. Okay, so there's the two different types of 5/0 grinds. I would say the main difference really is how they look. I much prefer the one where you stood fully on top of the deck and your wheels are right on top. You have to pinch on your toes. You can also do the other one. I think more people do this one where they hang the board below the coping and they mainly pinch on their heel. The main difference between these tricks is kind of how you lock. On the one where the board is hanging low, you lock by your back heel putting a lot of weight on that wheel and you're hanging the board below the coping. On the one where it's on top of the coping, you need to make sure that you lock it in by putting weight on your toes so that the board doesn't roll on top of the deck. The way of getting in is simply twisting the board, pointing your toes down and leaning right into that ramp, making sure that you sort of level the board out this way as well with the ramp and ride away.